Yes,
Yes.
we can.
Right, it's Saturday afternoon here in France, and I've decided I'm going to live dangerously for the next 20 minutes. On the basis of yesterday's sessions and the kind of caliber of what was being discussed and what was going on, I've abandoned my slides. They're all there in the viewing. You can watch them. You can see them if you want to. What I'm going to now try is an experiment. And for the first time, we're going to load a large data set into Leonard, as it's called, my AI tool, which is an integration of AI and AHP. And by doing this, using live or representations of live data, you will get a better idea of actually how this is working. And I'm going to go through this pretty quickly because I want to concentrate on the actual processing so you can see it. And I would like you later to ask me to ask it some questions. So what I've actually done is to load data, and I'm just going to explain how we get to the point of actually processing it. So this is a complete experiment. It should work, but if it doesn't, then let's approach it in the spirit of scientific endeavor. So let me dump my slides. And let me start with what we've gone through to actually get to this point. This is about a year's worth of research, and I covered a lot of this in yesterday's session. So I'll kind of recap as best I can. So to actually find out whether an AI was actually capable of doing the job that we want, which is to assess management systems, so governance, risks, controls, incidents, end-to-end supply chain factors. Could it actually assess those, and could it judge a level of maturity? Could the AI actually make judgments in an AHP structure? So just to give you an idea, that is the document which sets out what we've done to actually test our approach. So these are a whole bunch of individual, almost piecemeal tests because of the nature of the way this works. We're dealing with something which is really quite complicated. So you can see we started off by simple things like, can we actually load data from a GRC system? Can we check the data is valid? Can we use AHP as a methodology, and so on? And we worked our way through these whole series of tests, and then moving into some real world things like, could it actually calculate student loan payments, building up a sequence of events towards actually trying to do it for real. So we've spent a lot of time testing, and it's been quite difficult because you have to simulate the real world, but you can't do it using proprietary information. It's just, it's not practical to expose a real business's information in that way. So that's the kind of testing that we've done really over the last, let's call it the last 6 months. And what we came to was the idea of building a method statement. Now, a method statement borrows from the world of business. They're used all over the place to define business processes, workflows, manufacturing techniques, things that people have to do. It is the method that you use to achieve a job. And this is what our method statement looks like. It's not quite the latest one. for various reasons, but it will give you the flavor of what the method statement is, what it looks like, which we are about to use, we hope, in running a live exercise. And you can get an idea of the structure that we've ended up with to actually do this evaluation, this assessment job that we want to do. So you can see there we've set our categories, we've set rules for testing the data, an initial pass or fail before it actually goes on to do any other analytics. What's the sequence of events that's carried out using the AHP? And basically, we're using AHP to identify how complete data fields are, how accurate they are, how consistent they are, and so on. We've set out what our data sets will contain for the AI to work with. We've set some criteria for the pairwise comparisons, weighting, how it's assessed, how we calculate scores, performing the consistency checks on the judgments, then going on to analyze the results, making recommendations, generating feedback, opportunities for improvement, and so on. Now we've got the rules for telling the AI, giving it the guidance on how it needs to interpret all of those fields. And in terms of this exercise that we're going to run, there's going to be something in the region of 2,000 data points in the various data sets that the system has. So I'll just explain that. So how we set the weights, what the criteria look like, guidance on making assumptions on the controls, then on to how it was going to report, and it's set to do 2-level reporting, preparing analysis and feedback, clarifications for its audiences, and you should be able to get a feel here of how we're building up what this method looks like. And this is what the AI has to understand in terms of how it works and how it does its job. And you can see here at 22 pages, it's actually quite a long-winded mechanism. It's quite specific in many ways. There's it's quite a serious attempt to avoid ambiguity, to make things explicit, and to actually help the AI on the basis that it's an autistic creature to actually do the job that we want it to do. So you've seen the testing. So just to make sure, can everybody see that? Can someone wave at me and just make sure we can see that?
Yeah,
Yes.
we can see that.
Okay, so what I've done is I've taken a whole bunch of data, which are kind of anonymized interpretations of real world information. So we've got risk data, control data, assets used in the business data, actions used, and incidents data. And that's based on the years 22, 22, 23, and 24. And these are extracts from a supply chain end-to-end, which can be about 20 areas of interest wide. Everything from purchasing to supplies to information security, and so on and so on. So I'm just, because my workstation is actually to the side of me, is everyone, I'm assuming everybody will be able to read this.
Yes.
Okay, so our AI is called Leonard. And I say that comes from a Terry Pratchett character, which just makes doing this work something more interesting and more conversational. Right, so today Um, so this is just a sort of starting interrogation of the thing, just to make sure that we're actually along the right lines. So you can see already it's now applying the method statement. So it's checking the fields, all the data sets meet the thresholds. It's now suggesting that something it could do is to actually go down and give me a quality report on that data, which if I was being here as an auditor, an external or internal auditor, that might be something that's useful to me, because I could then drill down into that data and maybe look for errors or omissions or problems which would be exposed from that information. So let me now say, no, thank you. So what it's actually now doing is going through the method statement, following the rules to analyze the content of the data fields, and it will then make its judgments in an AHP pairwise kind of way. So it's just started off by giving me some a sort of simple summary of the data sets. So for the various categories, it's saying there's an awful lot of gaps really in the data fields. Okay, so now let's say right. So I've asked it now to carry out a maturity judgment. So this is the response that I've actually asked it to. So it's showing that over the 3 years, it's got a clear trajectory towards maturity. It's giving me some strengths. It's giving me some areas for attention. Okay, so its final judgment is that on the basis of the data that I've given it, it's judged to be at the professional level of maturity. So even though I've used a hodgepodge of data sets drawn across 3 years of this management system's life, it's still been able to form a judgment, which I would agree with, that this organization is at the maturity stage. Okay, so now let me ask it to report that for its audiences. So what it's now moving on to is a report, at least I hope it is, for the compliance team in the business. So it's given me a general report for management. What it should now be doing is generating a report. Well, we seem to have stopped. Oh, well, we seem to have ground to a halt with the second report. We close that. What it should have done was to go on and automatically generate the report for the compliance team in the business. But this is an experiment, as we said. Okay. Oh, okay. It's decided to finish the so it's given me a little bit of maths there about how the AHP has been calculated. And it's generated there the consistency index. And that this is its interpretation of those values that it's created. So on the score of that, the judgments that it's made on the data sets that we've given it and then used within AHP show that it's well within what we would expect a consistency index to show, consistency ratio to show. So it's saying that it indicates the judgments used in the maturity analysis are consistent and reliable. Okay, I can ask it to explain that. I can now ask it what could be done to improve the maturity of this management system. And what it seems to have done is to have realized that some areas of the management system we're assessing are not actually all at that professional level. So what it's doing is going through and creating actions and recommendations for all the different areas of the management system's data that we're working. And now it's going on, because what it now has here, it's going on to talk about governance frameworks and so on. This is a random set of data. It's not a complete representation of a management system. So it's now making assumptions about what it should be telling me to try and help improve what we're looking at. So general recommendations across all levels. So it's saying, you know, timeliness, timing of when data is provided, when entries are made into the management system, need to be improved. Shareholder engagement is seen to be a problem. Cross-linking between the controls, risks, and so on could be strengthened between actions, risks, and controls to make a more integrated approach. So by following these recommendations, we can actually improve the management system that we've just analysed. So in a nutshell, that is what we've set out to achieve. it's based on using AHP as the method for capturing judgments from the AI. And what I'd like to do now is to throw it open to you to ask me to ask it some questions.
Thank you, Ken, for this wonderful demonstration. And I hope your this AI tool will do wonders in future. So any prompt suggestions or any questions from the audience that you can ask to Ken, or you can ask any prompt that Ken can run into his new AI tool. Anything.
Stunned silence.
Very interesting, Ken, that you demonstrated a live run with the GPT and AHP integration with the GPT is very interesting. So it is in the process of development. Still, you are refining with your own database, like the management system data sets, or what stage is it now? As you said, it has been trained and validated, and it is in the process. So could you elaborate in, is it in use now?
Okay.
Thank you. Yeah, it
Um,
was a great presentation. Yeah.
okay. There is no LLM training. This is out of the box Chat GPT. What we've done is to create, I call them side documents, side knowledge that has been added to our part of Chat GPT. And that's the method statement and various other things that it needs to cope with the task that we're doing, that we're asking it to do. It potentially, we are now one step away from having a proven tool, and that is to actually build a live management system. One of the two companies who are helping us, GRC1 is a British company who provide management systems used by many organizations around the world for governance, risk and controls. And there's another business called Business Optics who provide business process management. And they understand processes, methods, and so on. So what I have to do after this conference is to persuade Business Optics Limited to actually grant me permission to load all of their live GRC into this tool and actually run a full-blown analysis. What we've just done today is much, much more than we've tried before. We've always been going through this incremental testing. I mean, with Louis Vargas, we looked at the reciprocal issues. We looked at the interpretation. Could it draw, how could it draw conclusions? So we are at that point where probably February of next year, with the Trade Council, we will begin to look at how we can deploy this tool. This is actually one of two tools. There's another tool available from the Trade Council already on the Chat GPT library, which is about building these management systems, but that does not use the AHP. So we are now at that point where really we're 90%, 95% confident it will work. It's now a case of, can we scale it? And what we've just done is the biggest scale. I mean, there's well, let's just ask it. So it's got 4 data sets there, which are, so that's 4 data sets of 4 sub data sets. That's 16 sets of data that it's actually had to analyze and to work with. So this is probably, well, 4 or 5 times more data than we've ever actually tried to analyze. And this would be probably 10% of what a full-blown management system would demand to be analyzed. So does that answer your question?
May I ask a question also?
Yeah, sure.
So I'm curious, is it necessary to load a data set into it, or alternatively, if you were sitting at, say, a Bloomberg trading terminal, could you live reach into the trading terminal to extract the information that you needed to feed into the system?
With this setup here, basically we manually load data sets, which are PDFs, Word documents, Excel spreadsheets, whatever. That's basically a limitation of the way that GPT itself works. We've also looked at methods, techniques, if I call it techniques, of how we use the method statements, prompts, workflows, and processes to actually carry out the processing. And there are pros and cons. This is basically a black box. We trust the black box because it gives us a consistency index. And we can kind of understand that. Actually, in the real world, what it might be better to do is to chop this up into little salami pieces and have a workflow tool, do this bit, do this bit, do this bit, do this bit. These little bits might have their own method statements for themselves, or we might have one giant method statement. These are the things that we still have to kind of experiment with and learn from. But the one thing that's been really positive is that GPT out of the box, using this method statement approach, has got us a very, very long way down the road to kind of achieving what we want, which is an AHP-based methodology of forming judgments on massive amounts of data, which would just be impossible in a classic audit. Conventional audits are using techniques we developed 50 years ago. And those are now so dyed in the wool and so stuck in. Actually, it's becoming counterproductive, particularly for smaller businesses. So this is how you capture the data is it's an architectural decision. At the moment, we're loading it by hand, but with Business Optics as the tool, they have a workflow engine built in. They can handle method statements because they're handling stuff for big corporates. So once we can add these techniques into their kind of platform and learn from that, then any platform will be able to do this for any assessment or judgment purpose. Does that kind of answer your question?
Yeah, I could see where if you were sitting at one of the terminals, you could use the Excel interface to extract the data that one's looking for and then load it into the data set as a process flow, right?
Yeah, I mean, to do that sort of stuff, then you have to start using the ChatGPT API. Remembering that this has been, if you like, an experimental project. Nobody knew whether we could make this work or not. So the next steps would be, well, we can capture all that data through the API. We can send it off as a batch process, do it overnight, and GPT will just give us back the results and the indices and the reports and stuff that we want the following morning. And it's cheaper. So how you get the data is an entirely architectural choice. I mean, you can use robotic screen tools. We did experiment with that, but APIs seem to be the best and the most secure.
Okay. Ken, I also want to ask one thing. Can I?
Yeah, ask.
Okay, so there is one AI platform called Character.ai. You might have heard the name of this. And in this platform, a user can create any of his favorite character. The character might be from comic books, favorite actor, favorite actress, you just name it, Harry Potter, Spider-Man, Iron Man, whatever. But this platform is based in US, and recently there has been many cases has been filed against this platform because the character has been giving many things to humans, telling many things to humans that has been unethical, against the values, against the morals and all. So in the context of this, because there are so many different AI tools have been developed, so how government or any other body can regulate this? Because you have also been developing your AI model. So developers, how can be they can be so sure that the model which is giving information to their users has been validated, correct, and not against any morals or different so.
Okay, well, my answer to that is that we have not created a model.
Mhm.
All we are doing is using what is naturally available. In this case, from ChatGPT, we have also experimented with Anthropic's Claude. And in fact, to develop this, we've used we used 3 AI tools, some to generate content that was used by the other. For the moment, the ChatGPT OpenAI platform seems to be the best at doing this kind of analytical approach. The Claude Anthropic's Claude is also very good, but it seems to have a few foibles. Gemini and these other platforms that we tried out in the early stages, included trying to make our own, they're just too quirky. Their sources, their origins are too specific. GPT and Claude seem to be the only two that we've really worked with that have a flexibility that enables you to do this. I mean, you can't ask, most tools couldn't cope with an AHP process. They couldn't do it. You know, and the extension we want to get to is the analytic network process, because when you've got something, 20 areas of interest wide, you're then talking about super matrices, and people were talking about hyper matrices yesterday. I think Valerio raised the point. The whole idea of this is it's the method statement, and we should be able to take a method statement in a few years' time and give it to any AI tool, and it will do the job we want. The idea is not to try and train things. There's just so much information out there in these learning models. Can we just use it? We stop becoming obsessed with the learning models. Can we just make these things do a job? Can you do an AHP or an ANP analysis of a management system that's 20 areas of interest wide with 10,000 data sets in each one? We're probably a little way off that, but that's the kind of goal that we'd like to achieve. And even if we only get 10% of the way there, in terms of audit, internal and external audit and assessments and due diligence and so on, it becomes a really useful tool.
Okay, I get it. Thank you so much for your answer and your opinion. Great.
I have another question. Ken, when you talk about, whenever you do anything with ChatGPT, you have the pay version, you have the pro version. Which version are you talking about?
4.0.
We're using straightforward GPT for ordinary out of the box. I have actually got the ability to pay, but this might make you smile. What we're doing here uses so little computing power, they've never bothered to invoice me since last December.
Oh, okay. So you're not, your version of ChatGPT is not a pay version.
It's GPT-4. It's clear.
4.0.
It's the straightforward 4.0. It is not the one that can speak. It's not the one that can do all the other sexy stuff. This is just literally out of the box GPT.
Okay. Thank you.
And Anthropic, to be fair to both of them, we could probably just about get Anthropic to do this as well.
Okay.
But the important thing for all of this is, you know, it's now got to be testing, testing, testing. We have to have confidence in this. You know, I mean, I've had people tell me we wouldn't make this work.
Yeah.
And, you know, we at face value, it looks like it's working.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm assuming there are no any further questions.
Okay.
Okay. Thank you so much, Ken, and thank you so much to all the speakers who presented their work. And it was a great and amazing experience. And so I think we are done for this session. And there is another session right after this, after 5 minutes. So I wish you all the best, and I wish you a great Christmas with your loved ones. And I hope to see you guys, all you guys in person someday.